Hi everybody, welcome to Dulcimerica. My name is Futch. Thank you for joining me for part 6 of a study on chord progressions. How they work, what they're made of, and what you can do with them. Now, if you haven't watched any of the previous episodes, I really recommend that you go back and watch the previous 5 because we're going to be digging straight right down into the nitty-gritty of a very important part of chord progressions, harmonic function. Now, I know we've been using some very scary terms along the way, but they will soak in the more you use them, and that's sort of the intention of this series, is to use them over and over again so you become comfortable and familiar with them, and then you can use them in your own music. So we're going to recap some things very briefly and then jump right in and take a look at harmonic function, which basically is a way of thinking about the functions of each of the chords, which is going to lead you to an understanding of how to move those chords around in the most convenient, pleasing, awesome, and most accessible way possible. We're going to have a lot of fun doing this, and we'll do this into 2 different sub-episodes, one here on major keys, and then next week we'll look at minor keys. Before I step any further into the abyss, I want to say hello to my patrons on Patreon, and all of you guys out there have been so amazing during this whole pandemic lockdown, with all the gigs canceled and me sitting at home going, oh my gosh, and I don't have to do that. I don't have to worry because you're there for me every single day. And I love waking up in the morning and thinking about the content that I can create for all of you. This community has been amazing in the past 7 years that I've been a patron wrangler, I guess, in the community. And it's been a lot of fun with your suggestions. And it's actually helped me to grow as a musician, as an artist, and as a teacher. So it's been this give, take, back and forth, very cyclical thing that I have enjoyed to the nth degree, and I know that many of you have as well from all of the messages and emails that I get. So thank you guys very much for all that you do. And as we roll into the fall of 2021, I know we're dating this episode a little bit, but that's okay. I just want to thank you again for being able to just not stress about where that next gig is coming from and just focus on doing what I love to do most, which is play and teach music. Thank you again. Those of you who don't know what Patreon is, it basically removes the middleman in any situation between fans and artists and gives people a direct connection. There are all kinds of people on Patreon. There's dancers, there's sailors, animators, musicians, videographers, directors, you name it. They're all out there and they're connecting directly with their group of people out there who appreciate what they do. So on my particular Patreon, you can actually get everything I've produced in book form, musical form, and written form, tablature, instructional materials for just $5 a month. And there's an annual pass option where you can get 2 months free, a 16% discount for $50.40 for the whole year. That means bypass my store, don't even bother going there, and everything is already there for download and unlimited access for you in my vault. Not only that, but I produce new content exclusively for patrons every single week. So for $5 a month, you could be jumping in here with the mountain dulcimer, Native American flute, ukulele, and general music theory. There's a lot more where this came from, and if you want to give a little sampling of it, go to patreon.com/bingfutch, scroll down a bit, and you'll see all of these posts under the tag Open House. Click on that and you'll see over the past 7 years so much of what I've offered to my patrons and what you too can have as well. So please do consider becoming a patron. And for all of you guys out there in my community, I love you. Thank you so very much. All right, guys, we're going to jump right into harmonic function. We've done a lot of looking at the different elements of chord progressions. Let's go ahead and do a recap right now, and I'll get this stuff on the screen so that you can prepare yourselves for the deep dive we're about to take today. First of all, the key is what sets the ground rules for a piece of music. The scale that comes out of that key, these 7 notes, they're the ingredients for a melody and chords. Then we've got the scale degree. That's basically the placement of notes within the scale, and it also represents the chords that can be built using each note as the root of that chord. Chord progression is basically the movement from one chord to the next, and there's a little bit of an art to it, as we will talk about today in our study of harmonic function. So what is harmonic function? Basically, it's thinking about the purpose of chords and their relationships with the tonal center of a piece of music, which would be the key. The whole idea here is that the tonal center is home. And as we're moving chords around, the objective is when you leave home, obviously, to come on back home, either sometime during the music or several times during the music. Now, in order to analyze these relationships, we give each scale degree a name in order from 1 to 7. They are tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, dominant, submediant, and subtonic. That's also known as the leading tone. I know they're kind of scary, but they will make sense by the time this video is through. Before we dig into all that though, let's go ahead and take a look, just a small bite, if you will, and look at the 3 main tent poles of functional harmony. The tonic, which is our 1 chord, the subdominant, which is our 4 chord, and the dominant, which is our 5 chord. So let's say we're in the key of D major, okay? We're in DAD tuning here. We are using the D major scale. And if we build chords using the 1st, 4th, and 5th scale degrees by hopping and skipping through them, we end up with D major as the tonic. G major is the subdominant, and A major is the dominant. D major is our tonic center. So we'll start there and we'll end there basically. Start our tune with D, but all roads lead to D major. Let me put a little graphic up here that shows our universe. We'll put D major in the center of our graphic. A major is our dominant chord, and it's an interval of a 5th above the tonic. So we'll put that over here to the right. Now G major is our subdominant, and it's an interval of a 5th below the tonic, so we'll put that over here to the left. We now have 3 major triads, all separated by a 5th, and they produce together the 7 degrees of the major scale. G has G, B, and D. D has D, F sharp, and A. And A has A, C sharp, and E. The tonic chord is literally the center of this mini musical universe. How cool! Music scholars back in the 1600s realized that these were the most important chords of the major tonality. Now let's put them back in numerical order as they occur, and we'll start to see where these functional terms come from. As we found before, the relationship between the 1 and 5 chords is the strongest in musical theory. So we call the 5 chord the dominant. It is the most powerful. The 4 chord is just below that, so it's called the subdominant, and it's the second strongest relationship between our tonic and itself. The prefix sub means under or below. Here's the simplest description of harmonic function. The subdominant wants to move to the dominant, and the dominant wants to move to the tonic. In other words, it wants to go home. The tonic can move to either one, and that's it. That if you just hold nothing else in your head but just that, this is going to be just simply a breeze for you. So once again, the subdominant wants to move to the dominant, and the dominant wants to move to the tonic. The tonic can move to either one. Now you can move from the subdominant, our 4 chord, to the tonic, our 1 chord, but notice how the resolution is weaker. It feels a little restless, you know, like there's still more to say. The subdominant can be used to break up that strong dominant tonic relationship. You know, a bit for variety if you want to tread water a little bit, but the strongest resolution is going to come from the subdominant moving to the dominant and the dominant returning to the tonic. It feels like we've arrived home when we come back to the tonic, and of course we have. It's the center of our tonal universe when we're playing in a particular key. Now let's put the rest of the terms on the buffet table, and we'll take a look at how they interact with the big three. We'll start with the mediant. It's built off the third scale degree, and it gives a minor chord. This degree is called the mediant because it's the halfway point between the tonic and the dominant. There's our mediant right there. It's in between open and 4 here. Next we have the submediant, built off the 6th scale degree, and it also yields a minor chord. This degree sits perfectly in between the tonic and the subdominant if you go down from the tonic with our octave here at the 7th fret. If we go down, it sits perfectly in between the tonic and the subdominant right here. There's our submediant right there. Then we have the supertonic. The prefix super means above or over, and this is just above the tonic on the 2nd scale degree. It's also a minor chord. Finally, there's the subtonic, the 7th scale degree just below the tonic. It's also called the leading tone, and it forms a diminished chord when built from the root note. Now notice how the names all reflect the relationship between the scale degrees and the chords that they're built from. Either they're above, below, or in the middle with relation to our big three functions. In fact, all of the degrees and chords are paired in groups related to the tonic, subdominant, and dominant, which means that our basic rule, subdominant leads to dominant, which leads to the tonic, applies to all of these pairs. Subdominant leads to dominant, leads to tonic. That should be like a mantra in your head. Subdominant leads to dominant, leads to tonic. I could make a song of this, perhaps. Subdominant leads to dominant, leads to tonic. Subdominant leads to dominant, then the tonic. That kind of works. Subdominant leads to dominant, then the tonic. Subdominant leads to dominant, leads to home. That's going to be the single off my next record. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at this flow chart. I know that's a lot of stuff to keep upstairs in your head, a lot of terms and a lot of rules and so forth. Let's just try and break it down visually a bit more and give you an idea of what to expect as we start moving these pairs of chords around in these different groups. Okay, so with this chart, the tonic or the 1 chord is at the bottom, and it can lead perfectly to any of the chords above it. The idea here is to make your way back home to the 1. The closer the chord is to the 1, the more it wants to resolve to the tonic. The farther you get away from the tonic, those chords have less pull and they can move other places. Let's take a look at the subdominant group first. This includes the 2 chord and the 4 chords. In the key of D major, that's going to be E minor for the 2 chord, and then G major is our 4 chord. Both of these chords, both of the subdominant chords, 2 and 4, they want to resolve to chords in the dominant group. Remember, subdominant leads to dominant. So why are these 2 chords paired together? Why are they hanging out? Because the supertonic and the subdominant both share 2 notes, so they can actually substitute for each other. Only 1 note changes between E minor and G major. They're both restless chords that can precede a move to the dominant group. In fact, This group, they are sometimes called predominants because they literally are played before you get to the dominant. Once again, leading to the dominant and then leading to home. Let's play 1, 4, 5 progression. It's going to be D, G, and A. Now let's substitute E minor, the 2 chord, for G. That works really nice, doesn't it? Nice substitution there. By the way, what we're doing there is it's a relative relationship. G is the main chord and E minor is the relative minor. And every single major chord has got a relative minor that shares 2 notes and can be used perfectly for substitutions. Now the tonic group is a very consonant and restful group. The mediant shares 2 notes with the tonic and the dominant. So it's a perfect bridge between the 2 of them. So if I play a 1, 3, 5 chord, 3 being F sharp minor, that works real nice. I can go directly to the 5 if I want to. Or I can bridge the space in between the tonic and the 5 by using the 3, the mediant. That's nice. It's a nice little progression there. The submediant shares 2 notes with the tonic, and it's a great substitution if you want to bring about a change of mood. So let's play 1, 3, 5 here. Now instead of playing the 1 chord, let's play the 6 chord instead. That's going to be B minor. So let's go ahead and put the 6 of those together and see how it changes the progression. It shakes things up a little bit, doesn't it? The submediant also shares 2 notes with the subdominant, and it can be used as a substitution as well. Here's your 1, 4, 5 chord. And let's replace that 4 chord with a 6 chord, B minor. Just a kind of a different flavor. Not anything too different because once again we've got 2 notes shared by those 2 chords, and so that's going to make them very consonant and very, very happy to replace one or the other. The dominant group consists of the 5 and the 7 chords, and man, all they really want to do is go home. They just want to go to the tonic. The 5 shares the perfect 5th of the tonic, so it pulls really, really hard to home. Boom, it's very, very satisfying resolution there. The 7 chord's 5th resolves up a half step to the tonic for a strong finish, and that half step move there involves the leading tone, which is why besides being called the subtonic, it's also called the leading tone, because that leading tone, C sharp, is resolving upwards just a half step to D. All right, so hopefully all of this is starting to kind of slowly sink in, and just don't worry if it's not coming to you very, very easily, because it took me a very, very long time of sort of bandying these terms about and then putting them into practice before they began sinking in. And I still study music theory every single day, so don't be discouraged. It's a language that we're learning, and no one really expects to be fluent when they first begin studying a language when they're traveling overseas. So everything's going to be cool. Just make sure you use it as often as you can and practice, and there are a lot of different ways we can do that, and we'll talk about that here at the end of the episode. But right now I'm going to break out another flow chart. The one flow chart we had is going vertical, and it's showing everything from the bottom to the top. This one is going to be moving from the right to the left, and it contains all of our groups and some helpful color coding, I hope. We have our hot colors on the right side, and then we get into more neutral colors on the left side. So remember, we're starting with the tonic, the 1 chord. And everything that is close to the tonic is going to want to resolve very, very strongly back to the tonic. The tonic can go anywhere. So you can go from 1 to the dominant group. You can go from 1 to the subdominant group. And of course, you can go from 1 to the tonic group. When you go to the dominant group, you're really going to want to come right back to the tonic. When you leave from the tonic and go to the subdominant group, you can then make your way back by way of the dominant group back to the tonic. Or you can shoot all the way across to the tonic group and then kind of leisurely make your way back. But those chords in the tonic group can literally hop, skip, and jump wherever you want them to go because they're a lot more neutral, they're a lot more consonant, they are restful, they are chill. Whereas the hotter the colors get, then you've got less consonant, more restless, and they really just want to go home. So if you kind of picture that psychology of the chords and the progressions and where you can go, it makes this really easy. So I'm going to walk through a few different examples here, and you'll be able to hear the conflict and resolution that comes out of moving these chords around. And once again, our chords for the key of D, the 1 chord is D major, the 2 chord is E minor, the 3 chord is F sharp minor, the 4 chord is G major, the 5 chord is A major, the 6 chord is B minor, the 7 chord is C sharp diminished. And we'll be using all of those chords as we move around this flow chart. Let's go ahead and start playing 1. Now I'm going to go to the 5 chord. That really wants to go back home, so let's do that. Let's go from 1 to the 7 chord. That really wants to resolve back to the 1. Let's go from 1 to 2. Now what? Let's go to the 7 chord. Do that again. 1, 2, 7. Very nice little circle we made there. So you see the chord progressions are enabling us to make some moves. We're traveling, but we're always coming home. All right, now let's do 1 to the 4. Take it to the 5. And back to 1. Very nice. So within this group, everything is kind of packed tight, you notice. So let's kind of make a longer journey before we come back home. Let's go 1, 3. Yeah. Now let's go to the 6. Yeah, we got a nice little pattern going on here. Now let's go to the 2. Making our way back home. 7. And 1. Let's do this again, but this time we'll use the 4 chord. Here we go. 1 chord. 3 chord. 6 chord, 4 4 chord, 7 chord, and 1 chord. Now you don't have to come right back home immediate, and you don't have to just go through each one of those groups. You can actually kind of bounce back and forth if your story needs somebody not to go from point A to point B directly, but maybe they go from point A and then they reach a point where maybe they walk around in circles for a bit. Like, who is the character Jeffrey on Family Circus? You always used to see him and the path he used to take on the way to school or through the park, and it went and meandered in every little direction, and you could tell where he went by that little dotted line that went around, and eventually you found Jeffrey. We can do the exact same thing with a chord progression. So let's go ahead and do that, and let's meander a little bit. And a lot of the meandering we're going to do is going to be using those neutral chords on the far left side of the graph. Let's start off with our D major. And now go to 3, 6 chord. Let's go back to our 3. Let's bring our 4 chord in. Now let's go to our 2 chord. Back to our 4 chord. Back to our 2 chord. 5 chord. Make it a 7. And then go to the 1. Let me break it down from the double time now and show you some of this movement. Here we go again from 1. A slightly different path that time, but I was feeling inspired. So you can see that we don't necessarily have to use like this robotic feeling. We don't necessarily have to follow this flow chart and make our way back to the tonic directly. We can kind of take our time and make little side journeys, have a little bit of serendipity. Now you can do a lot of bouncing. These are basic rules for applying functional harmony. All of these rules, of course, were made to be broken, and that's going to be something we focus on getting into the last 3 episodes of the series. So we can bounce back and forth a lot more using our subdominant and dominant groups. Let me show you how that works by kicking things off with the 1 chord, of course, and then let's see where we go from there. Let's go to our 6 chord. Now to the 5, to the 4, now back to the 1, 3 chord, 4 chord, 7 chord, 1. Very different sort of a feel there as we go back and forth between these different scale degrees. So using this as a reference, once again reminding yourself that the subdominant likes to move to the dominant, likes to move to the tonic, and that includes the groups. That means both chords in the tonic group, both chords in the subdominant, and both chords in the dominant group. And if you kind of keep that in the back of your head as you're moving, you won't have to think about it too much. But there are 2 basic ways of going around this chord progression biz. One is to do it like we have done it, basically using a formula or a set of rules, if you will, that result in these different chord progressions. But another way of doing it, and the way you may be doing it already, is by sheer intuition. If it sounds good to the ear, then there's no problem whatsoever with going ahead and playing it exactly that way. So I think a combination of using what we've learned today and also intuition mixes together and makes you very, very shrewd as far as putting these things together. All right. All right, so I know that's a whole lot of stuff to contemplate, but if you go to the video description and click on the link there, it'll take you to Patreon where you've got those flow charts. Print them out in color and put them by your practice station, and then just practice moving from the tonic to the subdominant to the dominant and taking short trips, and then extending your vacation away from home and then coming back down again. The more you do it, the more it becomes intuitive to you, and the easier it'll be to move those pairs in the tonic, the subdominant, and the dominant group. It's a lot of fun, and do that for this next week, because this next week when we get together in the episode, it's going to be all about minor keys, and we'll be talking about some harmonic functions based on scales that we've only very barely mentioned early on in this series. So we'll be taking some left turns based on what we've already known. But it's okay, because it leads to a very exciting world of anything goes, where we can start really getting creative with how we put these things together. So practice, 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 have fun out there, and remember, subdominant leads to the dominant, leads to the tonic. Subdominant leads to the dominant, leads to the tonic. Subdominant leads to the dominant, leads to the tonic. Subdominant leads to the dominant, leads to the tonic. That's going on my next album. We'll see you next week, everybody.